You're listening to the Loyalty Minute, the show that helps you build better customer loyalty and more valuable user engagement. With your host, Rob Gallo.
Welcome, loyal listeners, to another episode of the Loyalty Minute. I'm your host, Rob Gallo, and today I'm eager and excited to chat with John Nantz. John is the founder and strategy consultant at Redwood Advisors. Thanks for joining me on the show, John.
Yeah, Rob, my pleasure. Thank you.
So for a bit of background and color about yourself, who you are, where you came from, and where you're going, let's fill the listeners in.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, I think, Rob, the reason we're talking today is I do management consulting, a lot of growth strategy work for some pretty big companies. A lot of companies people may be familiar with. We work with National Geographic. We work with Atlassian, kind of doing longer term kind of strategic planning, right? Where does this organization want to be in 3 to 5 years? And a key component of that is a customer. And it's really funny when you do these types of projects. In a lot of companies, it's easy to lose touch, right? It's easy to lose touch with the actual, at the end of the day, how you're delivering value for the customer at the end of the line, the person who's receiving your product or service. And so I've always been very much passionate and concerned about making sure the customer is getting considered as you're thinking about long-term planning. And we do that type of thinking as part of a broader type of thinking of which we call just strategic planning and growth strategy.
Got it.
That's kind of what we do.
So obviously the name of the show is the Loyalty Minute. We talk about loyalty from a brand loyalty perspective, customer loyalty perspective. But the first question that I ask all my guests is, how does John Nantz feel about loyalty? So what does loyalty mean to you, just in the general sense?
Yeah, that's great. It's a great question. We were talking about this before we started the call, Rob. It's a great question. So, I think for me, loyalty is, I would probably define it as you're strongly inclined to continue to purchase from the company. You're willing to overlook mistakes. And you're inclined to recommend the product to other people. I mean, if I had to define it for myself, and I'm not a professor at Wharton's marketing department, but just off the cuff from my perspective as a consumer and someone who does a lot of strategy work, I think those are 3 key things. It's like, can you retain them, right? Are they willing to deal with you when you have quality issues, and are they recommending you to other people? So all 3 of those tie to really critical growth drivers of any company. And I think about my experience as a consumer, I think that's probably true for me. The brands that I feel loyal to, I think I would be willing to do all 3 of those things.
So what's a brand, one of the brands or a couple of the brands that you're loyal to, and why, if you could think of it in a term of a story, like these guys did this for me and it made me feel like this? Yeah,
totally. Yeah, I love that. I know we were talking about before the show. I'm glad we did, because I was thinking about this question in the interim few minutes here. For me, I think I'm sure this comes down to personality, but like the thing that's jumping out to me, and I'll give examples on both, is I'm really loyal to companies that I think are actually making a real positive impact in my life. And then companies that are, I think, doing something really innovative. So I'll give you an example of that. So the first one is I'm taking a new kind of brain supplement or nootropic called Quality of Life. And I did some due diligence on them before purchasing. It's an expensive product, over $100, for a month of whatever types of, they've got different things like mental cognition and overall quality of life, skin health. And, it's like $140 for a month. You're like, wow, that's a lot of money. So I did some due diligence, and just the more I learned about this company, I was like, wow, these guys have really done their research. They've got these incredible products. They've got this incredible ingredients. They're not being cheap. Like you can tell, they've really, it's just very high quality. And I get the product and I use it, and I have to say, I think I use it this morning, and I think it makes a huge difference. It's crazy, but that product freaking works. So I think high quality effective products. Those guys, and I mean, for them, it's the price point, right? It's like $140 a month or whatever I'm paying them for my monthly supply of Quality of Life, but it makes such a good impact on my life. I mean, I recommend it. I'm obviously talking about the company on this show, and because it's super high impact. And I think similarly, another example is like Athletic Greens. And there are other companies that do Athletic Greens is sort of like a mix you can put in your drinks. It's a lot of micronutrients and stuff like that you can take in the morning. And there are other companies you can get the same ingredients for. We're not the same, but similar, but they're lower price.
Right.
But it's like, Athletic Greens created the category. And so for me, it's like they're the innovators, right? And I mean, me personally, it's like I want to work with the first. I want to work with the best. So I find that I'm more loyal if someone, like, to me, feels like they've done something innovative, right? I'm not going to just go save $10 and get the knockoff. It's like, I know, like you see all these Peloton knockoffs. I think it's so funny. They're called like Payaton. And like, I mean, it's totally shameless and it's funny, but I don't want to ride that freaking bike. I want to ride the Peloton. If I'm going to ride a bike, I want to ride a Peloton.
So then would you kind of classify it or categorize the loyalty that you would have to a brand more actual rather than mental, in the sense that, sometimes you think about brands and how they make you feel emotionally. This one is just because it works and it does what it says it's going to do. And you've kind of done your research and looked into it and said, this is what I need. This is the service they provide. They provide it seamlessly. Might be more expensive, but I'm willing to stick with them because why go somewhere else where I know this is already working?
Yeah. I'm very pragmatic. I think, I know consumers vary on this, right? And some are very into the story and the Coca-Cola bear and all that. Coca-Cola is a great example. Like I feel distance from Coca-Cola because when I drink it, and I'm not to make anyone bad who drinks Coca-Cola, but I'm very sugar sensitive. I'm hypoglycemic. And so for me, when I drink Coke, I don't feel very good. And so for me, the Coke brand has no pull. I actually feel a little pulled away because when I drink the product, I don't feel very good. And I mean, Coke's an amazing brand, but I think it shows, and I love their advertising. Yeah. But when I think about the brand, it has no pull to me because the products just don't make me feel good.
Yeah. But I guess, speaking of Coca-Cola, they probably have one of the biggest, most recognizable brands in the world. And you think about people that are loyal to that brand that have failed the taste test. Right? Back in the 80s and 90s when they did the Pepsi Cola challenge and people were choosing Pepsi, but still would buy Coke because they're Coca-Cola drinkers. So they can't see themselves as anything other than a Coca-Cola drinker.
Wow. Yeah. That's amazing.
But, and I don't want to belabor the issue, but getting back to the mental acuity that you mentioned earlier about the other product.
Quality of life.
What is it? Quality of life?
Quality of life. Yeah. Maybe someone will buy it.
Yeah, I'm going to definitely put a link in the description in the show notes. How do you compare the difference between being more cognizantly aware than not? Meaning, like, what do you use as a gauge to say, after I took this product and I've been on it for however long, my mental acuity is just a lot better, or whatever it is?
Yeah. Well, for quality of life, it's much more I would say the most salient thing for me is sort of calmness and presence. So I just find that I know it sounds crazy, but if you meditate for an hour, you feel a certain way. If you take a walk outside for 2 hours without any music and you're just walking on your own, you might be bored for the first 40 minutes, but then when you come back, you're like a little zen. There's a little bit of a zen vibe. This gives a zen vibe. Mm. I mean, and it's not arguable. I mean, for me, it's just like, I guarantee you I would succeed in a placebo. I mean, I know when I take it versus when I don't. And I'm not necessarily mentally faster. So it's much more of like my presence and awareness and all that is much better. And which is important. Yeah. I'm not necessarily sharper, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I do TM twice a day, 20 minutes nice. And 20 minutes tonight. I started maybe 5 years ago. My daughter and my wife and myself. My son was away at college. He never did it. Now he's bouncing off the walls. I keep trying to tell him to get into it, but no, I'm just kidding.
That's cool.
So let's move on to the business side of things, John. With the clients that you normally deal with, right, at Redwood Advisors, when you think about advising them from a loyalty perspective, how to think about their brand in relation to the customers that they're trying to attract. I mean, give me some sense of how you think about them and them positioning themselves for a long-term strategy to have a loyal customer base for themselves.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I'm going to answer this question, I think, in maybe a slightly different way than some of your previous guests. I think where I can offer real perspective here is how this sort of fits into the type of work that we tend to do, which is more of that kind of strategic planning type of thinking. And the thing that really jumps out to me that I think most companies would benefit a lot from is, quite frankly, just understanding the current state of their customers. Like I've been in multi-billion dollar companies. We don't even know what our customer retention rate is. Like we don't know in any given year, right, what percentage of customers purchase from us again, or how many times a customer might purchase for us. So like getting those basic analytics in place and just sort of knowing, how are we doing from a net promoter score, from a customer retention, from a share of wallet, like key parameters of just knowing how you're doing. I am really surprised how rare those types of analytics are, and they're always prove extremely valuable. So, I mean, I would just say, less from a marketing branding side, but just from a core financial, operational, strategic side, really measuring your customer metrics like you would cash flow, like you would employee retention, right? I think does make a big difference, because if your retention rate starts going down, it's like the canary in the coal mine, right? It's like, what's going on there? Like, or if your share of wallet starts going down, right? Or if your website visits start going down, like that's the first leading indicator that revenue is going to go down. So if you follow the customer, you're going to know where your business is headed. And so, I would just say, I mean, I don't know if that answers your question directly, but I think the thing it makes me think about is how much more room there is and how much improvement there is to know your customer better for a lot of companies.
And what's the suggestion in terms of the best way to get started for the for the company to start doing exactly that?
Yeah. I would probably do a diagnostic and say, okay, well, what are we tracking about our customer today? Like, what metrics do we currently tracking? It might be none. It might be 2. It might be 4. And then you say, okay, that's the current state. Where do we want to be? Like, how much information do we really want to know about our customer? And what metrics could we, what metrics do we want to track and potentially define to do that? And like how often do we want to measure this? Monthly, weekly, daily, quarterly, yearly? Like there's different, time frames you can look at. So figure out your metrics, figure out the time frames you want, figure out how you're actually going to get the data to do those, and then actually do the tracking. So I would call that kind of like a customer, customer management, customer, I don't even know what the right word would be, but some type of customer insights, probably the best way, customer insights and tracking system.
And then obviously to look at the data, learn from it, and then move yourself incrementally in the right direction. And
yes.
That's it's funny you say that, because I think about, maybe not billion-dollar companies that I'm doing business with, but $100 million companies that don't seem to have a clue about their customer base and what their clients actually want and interacting with their product or service. And it's mind-boggling to me that these people are just still, leading their market, but don't have any idea of what they're missing out on. And it's frightening, But so let me ask you then, what from your standpoint, when you think about creating customer loyalty, what's one of the things that you would implement? Like if you could put in something today to one of those companies that doesn't really have a good strategy and a good plan in place for understanding their customers, what's one takeaway that you could give that would say, here's one thing you could do that you should start seeing immediate results in your increased customer retention or customer loyalty?
Like super tactical or tracking?
Tactical.
That's really interesting.
Imagine they had all the tracking in place, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've got your, okay. Well, I know you just said that, but there's 3 things I want to say them quickly. I really like Net Promoter Score. Like, I think that is such a helpful metric. Like, you can do it for webinars. You can do it and it's so interesting to just see what people. So if I had to pick one metric to just say, okay, if we're not doing anything today, what could we do? Just asking people on a scale of 1 to 10, like, how happy are you with our service? And would you recommend it to a friend or family member? And when I give that number, I'm really thoughtful about it. I'm just like, it feels like a 9. It feels like a 3 or whatever. So if nothing else, I think that's a really good number. Followed by some form of an actual customer retention rate would be good. So that's number one. The second thing is, I think you need to meet your customers. And I see this a lot with my clients where it's like, you need to sit down and actually have a conversation. Like, I think it's some of the best time executives can spend. Like, go actually interview 6 customers for 20 minutes. And that's 3 hours. And you'll actually get their feedback. What's the best thing we're doing? What's the worst thing we're doing? Like, what's been going well? What's bothered you the most? Like, you can, put together an interview guide, and you can either do interviews or panel conversations. You can interview a number of customers for an hour together, and they can riff off each other. Mm-hmm. That's really important, because if you can say, what are we going to do that's tactical? You got to go figure out, what are the customers actually saying? So getting in the room with your customers and getting their input at a rich qualitative level. Like, I think the surveying and data tracking is never going to really tell you much about what's actually going on. It's going to tell you something's wrong. It's like the fire alarm. It doesn't tell you where the fire is. It doesn't tell you how big it is. It doesn't tell you what to go do. Do you go grab a fire extinguisher? Do you call the fire department? Do you grab some water? Fire alarm doesn't do any of that. It just makes noise, right? So the dashboards are just making noise, right? They don't really do much for you. I think when you get in the room with the customer, that's when you start getting some real insights. I think that relates to my third point, which is, and I don't know how much this is true, but if I look at myself as a consumer, I'm just super into quality, and when quality starts going down from my perspective, I'm out. And I know we were talking before, but like, I hate to say this, but Panera bread, and I know some people like Panera, and every once in a while I'll go in and get a salad, but I remember 5 or 10 years ago, I was always blown away with the quality of Panera. The ingredients felt fresh. And now I go in and it's just obviously not, right? It's just fast, quote, quote, healthy food, right? But you can just tell it's very manufactured, and it doesn't feel like I as someone who's, I know what they're doing. They're cost cutting on the food side. I mean, I know exactly what's happening because I've been involved in projects like this. So I can totally imagine the conversation, and we're going to save 2 cents per apple and, whatever. And it's, but at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, but the food's not as good. The apple sucks. It's no one wants to eat that apple now. Right. So you might as well just save 40 cents and not even have the apple. Right.
Yeah.
But I think people kind of get too caught up into cost optimization, and quality goes, and like, I don't eat a Panera anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Apple probably turned the tides in the personal computer market based on, well, it's hard to say quality, but I mean, ease of use. When I think of a computer, I think of, input, output. It's easy for me to put something in, but if I have to install drivers and I have to wait for update this and I have to restart that, to me, they get it. They get it. When I turn my computer on, I want to balance my checkbook. I want to surf the web. I want to do whatever I need to do without having to think about a computer.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's to me is the difference. And it's worth, for what I paid for this laptop, it's probably 5x for what I could get a PC for. Right. But I had to work on a PC a couple of weeks ago, and I had angst when I walked up to the keyboard. I was just, I had to install something or whatever. And it was just, I don't know. It's mind-boggling to me.
Got you.
I think a lot of it is emotionally attached too. Just the fact that, the frustration that sets in when you're just trying to accomplish something.
Yeah,
it weighs on you. But I get what you're saying about Panera. If they're not going to have the same level of quality, but to keep the price the same is the one thing. I heard something the other day too. I mean, this might be a little off topic. Arizona iced tea. They haven't raised their prices in years. You still get the big jug for 99 cents. I was at CVS the other day. I saw a little bottle of some other stuff, and it was like $2.30. And I see this huge one of Arizona iced tea, 99 cents. They said the company doesn't want to increase the price. They want to keep everything the same. They lower their margins if need be, but they build on scale and volume. And I was like, that's pretty cool.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Anyway, I know we could talk about this stuff forever, but we probably have reached the limit of our listeners' attention span because it's usually snippets from lunch and what have you. So 2 more quick questions.
Mm-hmm.
What does the future of loyalty look like to you? Customer loyalty, brand loyalty. If you could picture something in the future, Jetsons type, what does it look like?
Well, I think it's going to become more important, and that's the biggest thing I would say. I mean, I feel affirmed in that just from our conversation today. I think a lot of companies get really focused on revenue and they get focused on these kind of financial figures. And I just think the world's getting more competitive and more technologically sophisticated. And I do think customer loyalty, customer insights we're headed towards a world where that's going to become more important. Really having your pulse on this. And I think if companies don't, I think those are not going to be the high performers.
Yeah. Well, seems like the metaverse is trying to take over, and I've seen companies getting in there like JP Morgan and I'm thinking, what is JP Morgan doing in the metaverse? But they must have a plan for some reason, probably to extract your data to turn it into money somehow.
Exactly. I'm sure. And
then the final question, John, is if listeners want to get a hold of you, what's the best way they could do that?
They can even give me an email. Redwood Advisors is the firm, and we do a lot of strategic planning and growth strategy and new markets identification type work. My email is John, JOHN .a.nantz@rwadvisors.com. And people can feel free to email me. I love talking about this stuff.
Cool. Are you on LinkedIn as well?
I'm on LinkedIn as well. John Nantz, JOHN NANTZ.
Okay. They could look you up. Well, again, John, I want to thank you for your time and your insights. And also, I want to thank our loyal listeners for being loyal listeners. If you feel you've got some value from the show, please do share. That's how we grow. To reference this and other Loyalty Minute episodes, please look us up at theloyaltyminute.com. Enjoy.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for your next edition of the Loyalty Minute.